Hello and welcome to another Matura Express English live stream. My name is Chris and today we're gonna talk about graphs. Welcome back to this English live stream. Today, as I've mentioned in the beginning, we're going to talk about describing graphs, tables, and statistics. Let's dive right into the topic. At first, I'm gonna tell you what types of graphs, charts, tables, and statistics there are, or you should know actually. Then we're gonna have a look at useful phrases for describing graphs, charts, tables, and statistics. Then we're gonna describe graphs, charts, tables, and guess what? Statistics. And in the end, we're gonna have a look at some sort of demonstration for graphs and tables and statistics, of course. So types. What types are out there? So of course there are a lot of types. If you think about graphs, think about charts and so on. If we think about charts, for example, there is a specific one called a pie chart, which you can see here, right here. That's a pie chart. So in this case, you have a breakdown of electricity consumption by categories of consumption in shares or in percent of all households. To the right, you have some sort of a chart. Quite not unusual, but some of you might have seen it the other way around, so that it's more like a graph, but it's called Balken diagram. So you have a chart. Yeah. What else do we have? This, of course, is a traditional graph here, diagram. Graph shows, in this case, it shows some sort of percentage of SVD spending 80% or more of school day in general education classroom. And on the right side, we have a table. So very common means to show something, to show statistics, or in this case, homicides with firearms. Yeah, tables. So I think you encounter tables in your daily life. So yes, these are the basic types, I'd say, which you should know, of course. So useful phrases, although the first ones might also be labeled as just words, vocabulary. So we have first to describe a graph, statistics, you should know, of course, which words you have, can or should not use. So you have increase and of course the opposite decrease, just climb and fall, rise and drop. Stronger word is plummet, which we gonna use on the next few slides. Stagnate, so it's the same as in German, just of course pronounced differently. And fluctuate, it's also a word used in German, I think. Yeah. So phrases, of course, we're talking about phrases. So let's have a look at some phrases. So the graph shows that. So a very easy one to start off, maybe, or to use as a second thought or second sentence in your talk. So the graph shows that this pie chart illustrates that the slices of this pie chart, blah, 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 compare something. Something remained relatively extremely stable, for example. So the usage of adverbs here is, I think, very important, since it makes a good impression if you're able to use adverbs in the correct way, of course. So in another example, another example, of course, here is something has increased slightly, significantly, dramatically, gradually, steadily, rapidly. So those are just words you should use in order to make it more interesting, your talk, I'd say. Or something can remain relatively extremely stable. Of course, you can do comparisons. Something is as big as, or something is bigger than. Yeah, and you can also, of course, draw your attention on one specific part of the graph. If you think that's really important, then maybe use this sentence that I've written down here. Okay, describing graphs and charts. So what to do when the line goes up, basically. It's also in the book, so that's where I got it from. Something can boost, something can climb, increase, and so on. So remember, maybe a few of these words might be good. If the line goes up in a more extreme way, you can use terms such as rocket, soar, skyrocket, shoot up. And then, of course, after a period of skyrocketing, after increase, after something increased, something also stops to increase and reaches a maximum or the peak. Think about a mountain. Mountain has a peak. So increase, then decrease, and there's the peak, of course. And reach an extreme, it's also a thing. So the same goes with when the line goes down. You use, of course, decrease, decline. But the more advanced ones are deteriorate, to fall, okay, yeah, or to drop. If it is a faster decline, you can use to plunge, slump, or plummet. Of course, to crash and collapse is also possible, but yeah. I think those, these that are marked here or highlighted in gray, those are the ones that are more difficult and are a bit, yeah, nicer to use. Okay, to reach a low, to hit a low, to bottom out can also be used if something has reached its not peak, but its bottom. Okay. So, and if something can increase and decrease, something can also flatten out or remain stable. Then it's unchanged, of course, if something remains stable, steady, unchanged, or stagnate, to stagnate. But if something evens out, it has, maybe there was a decrease in this case beforehand. Now something evens out, flattens out, levels off, or stop rising and falling. You can also use it, it's very simple, of course. tables can be described with, I think tables are more difficult to describe, since you might think there's just a table and you might start just reading all the table or what the table shows. So in order to help you with that, just start with what's the table about, what can be seen in the first column, what can be seen in the second column. Okay, this case with countries and with the percentage. And then, of course, we have the lines, which are, these are all lines. So columns, Spalten, Zeilen, lines. In the first line, you can see that Colombia, blah, blah, blah. Now, in order not to keep going on with, in the second line, in the third line, in the fourth line, you might have, no, not might have, you should start comparing the things, or in this case, the countries. So, for example, compared to Spain, there is a significantly higher number of homicides in Colombia. So, where's Spain? Here's Spain, 16%. And of course, the second highest number, you can use whatever you want, but work with it and not only read the table or present the table by reading what is stated here. Use the figures and work with it, compare them, and add your own opinion. Maybe it surprised you that Switzerland has quite a high homicides with firearms, or maybe it surprised you that Colombia has just really high percentage of homicides. Yes, so work with it and not only read the table. So describing statistics is, of course, statistics are always something that involves graphs and charts, so therefore it's similar. So I have provided this link here. In this case, we have a pie chart. So these are all statistics with a pie chart. We have a chart. What else? You can click on it. That's the Pew Research Center for all of you who do not know it. Maybe use that resource to practice. They have a lot of statistics and fancy charts and stuff that help you to practice, basically. Yeah. So describing statistics is something that involves those charts, graphs, and so on. If you have statistics, maybe use terms such as the statistics state that there is an obvious increase in CO2 emission in Tyrol or something. So statistics, you always normally have percentage, you have graphs, charts that are worked with, and you also have text, of course. So if you have an article that has text, charts, and so on in it, work with it, compare the numbers. Statistics provide you with a lot of numbers, so think about the statistics that are often mentioned, for example, by politicians. If they're true or not, that's your decision, basically, or that's, you have to decide to choose the right resource, basically. So, of course, some statistics are valid. Yes, so, and keep in mind to compare the things you've read and not only read. So, For the practice and demonstration now, I just like to mention that if you start off with a paragraph, a chart, or whatever similar to that, think about what does the graph, table, or statistic show. So for example, the statistics is about people in Austria using public transportation. So the first thing you might explain to your examiners is that in this case the statistics is about the public transportation or the usage of public transportation in Austria. And then of course you can do whatever you want, but in a case of a graph, you just first explain what the horizontal axis or the vertical axis show, the line graph or the bar chart. You also have columns and rows, as I've mentioned before, with tables. So state what the graph or chart or table does here, or includes basically, and then start to describe, so with the help of these phrases. So in this case we have already done a few from this pie chart, but if you have a look at this pie chart, you might start off with the biggest share, which is heating here, and compare it to another share, not the second biggest maybe, but another one which might have surprised you or might not have surprised you. Fridges and freezers, so compared to the fridges and freezers, which take up only quote unquote 12.25% of all shares in households. The number of heating takes up 20.5 or something. Or you could also mention that it surprised you that other kitchen and domestic appliances only take up 3.5% of all households. So in this case, yeah, you can use the pie chart, and you have a lot of numbers which you compare with, and you can talk a lot about, I think so. So maybe it's in interesting standby consumption. So yes, in this case we have a graph that increases, stagnates, plummets, then skyrockets, and plummets again, and then kind of slowly decreases. So in this case we have units sold on the vertical axis, and on the horizontal axis we have the months. I think it's very important to state what the axes show, because then everyone knows what it's all about. In this case, the graph itself is a product labeled product Y. In this case, and company, blah blah blah. There's the headline. So worldwide sales of a product by a company. And then you can start describing. You might not only start with January, then move to February, but you might start with compared to June, I don't know the year, where the company sold 90,000 units worldwide. compared to January. So they, if you compare these two, they sold in these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. They sold 80,000 more units. So I think very successful. But then they kind of, it goes down. Yes. Okay, that's it for today. If you have questions, as always, you're very, very, very welcome to ask questions in the chat. We're gonna come back to them as soon as possible. Yeah, but for the time being, we will see each other on Wednesday next week. And yeah, have a nice evening and goodbye.